it's Carolyn and welcome back to my channel. Today's video is going to be another episode in my freezer cooking series. I'll be sharing with you 3 easy and delicious freezer meal ideas that you can use for those busy nights when you just don't feel like cooking. So if you're new to my channel, you might not know my approach to freezer cooking is a little bit different than some. Instead of creating like 10, 20, 30 freezer meals in one day, what I like to do is find meals that will freeze really well, incorporate them into my weekly meal plan, and then just double the recipe. So I have one for dinner that night and then one I have prepped, stored away in the freezer, ready for another night, days, weeks, or months down the road. So that's my approach to freezer cooking. I think it is much easier to take that approach than to try and spend a whole day trying to fill your freezer with a bunch of meals. So I hope that you use that little trick and I hope it saves you a ton of time.
So I'm getting this freezer cooking session started by making 2 big batches of this healthy and hearty slow cooker meatball soup. Now this comes together pretty fast once you get the produce prepped, so that's what I'm getting started with here. I have 2 pounds of carrots, 6 cups of green beans, 2 zucchinis, and 2 yellow onions. Now I'm going to be making 2 batches. I'm going to be cooking 1 for dinner tonight, and I'm going to be storing 1 away in the freezer. That's just how I prefer to do my freezer cooking. It's just not realistic for me to make like 10, 20, 30 meals at once. Usually I'll just try and double things that I'm already making for dinner throughout the week so that I have an extra batch on hand, and it really doesn't take that much time. So once I get all the produce washed, I'm dicing it into bite-sized pieces. The rest of the meal comes together super fast, I promise. As you can see here, I have my freezer bag prepped for the one that I'm going to be saving for another day. And then I'm grabbing 2 jars of just regular pasta sauce marinara, as well as 2 bags of frozen meatballs. They should be about 16 ounces each. I found that that was a pretty good amount for the amount of soup that I had been making. Now, if you're going to be making this right away, you need a carton of chicken broth, but if you're going to be making it as a freezer meal, then you don't want to add the chicken broth to the bag. You'll add that the day that you cook. So here you can see I'm just dividing up all the ingredients between the one I'm making now and the one I'm storing in the freezer. I added just a little bit of extra seasoning, and you can use whatever spices that you like. I just used a little garlic seasoning and a zesty Italian blend. And then this just cooks on low for like 6 hours, and it was so flavorful and delicious. I am really looking forward to having my next batch very, very soon. So again, this came together pretty quick and easy, very easy recipe to double. And I hope that you'll give this a try as a freezer meal or just a regular crockpot meal really soon. Next up, I am making a huge double batch of this homemade vodka sauce. I'm adapting a recipe that I found on TikTok to make it PCOS friendly because I try and make all my meals gluten and dairy free. But I'm starting with 2 of these packages of pancetta. They're 4 ounces each, so 8 ounces total. I'm just adding that to my big stock pot with a little bit of olive oil and start to render the fat out of that. So while that's kind of cooking away, I'm going to chop up 2 onions as well as a handful of garlic. I'm going to try to dice it up really fine, as you can see. And then once that's all chopped up, I'll just add that to the pot along with the pancetta that is already in there. It's smelling really good at this point, just so you know. I have 2 cans of tomato paste that I'm going to open up and add in there, just mixing everything together. And I'll be giving that a little seasoning with some oregano and red pepper flakes. You don't need to measure, just measure with your heart. Now I've got 4 of these big cans of crushed tomatoes. They're 28 ounces each. And then instead of heavy cream, I am using dairy-free half and half. I'm using 2 cups total. Lucky for me, Tito's vodka is gluten-free. It's my favorite vodka, so I'm adding an entire cup of that And then I'm going to give this a stir and let it cook for 30 minutes to burn off the vodka. While that's cooking, I'm going to grate up some Parmesan cheese and grab a stick of my favorite plant-based vegan butter that is dairy-free. Honestly, I didn't measure the cheese. I just did kind of like a big handful, but I would say it was between 1 to 2 cups. Now, after 30 minutes, I'm seasoning this with both salt and fresh ground pepper, and then I'm going to go ahead and add in my butter and my Parmesan cheese, dairy-free for me, but you can use whatever one you like. And just give that a stir so that the cheese gets incorporated, the butter gets melted, and this is going to be ready to go. I served it over some gluten-free penne with chicken sausage and spinach, and it was absolutely delicious. My husband loved it too. And then I had tons to store away. I have these little silicone molds that are 1 cup each. So I got the sauce into those once it was cooled and froze that. And you'll see how it comes out of the molds pretty soon. They're in 1 cup servings, so really easy to portion it out for meals. It's actually 2 days later because I had to freeze this in 2 batches. So I actually got 16 of these 1 cup servings, which is awesome. I'm going to be having vodka sauce for months probably. So I was able to get them out of these containers. I just had to run a little hot water along the side to loosen it, and they popped out really well. And then I have 8 in each bag. Each little cube is 1 cup, and I have my bags labeled, and I can stick these in my deep freezer. So that is awesome, and I'm going to be continuing along with the rest of my freezer cooking throughout the week. Last but not least, I am making the Skinny Taste tuna casserole tonight for dinner, and of course I'm doubling it to make one for the freezer as well. This is one of my favorite casseroles to make. It's super tasty, and I'm getting started by boiling water so that I can cook my pasta. So while I'm waiting for that to come to a boil, I'm going to go ahead and chop up 2 of these yellow onions. I have 2 of these packages of baby bella mushrooms that I'm going to be washing and dicing up in just a moment. But before I do that, I'm just going to add the onions to a saute pan with a little butter and get those cooking while I prep the rest of the ingredients. Once my onions are softened, I'm adding in 6 tablespoons of flour. I use gluten-free flour, but you can use any flour that you like, before I give it a big sprinkle of kosher salt. By now my water's boiling, so I am adding in 12 ounces of pasta. You can use egg noodles, that's what the recipe called for, but I had this lentil pasta and it worked perfectly. Now we'll be making our own cream sauce with chicken broth and almond milk. You'll need about 3.5 cups of chicken broth and 2 cups of milk. I'm using almond milk because I'm dairy free, but use skim 1%, 2%, whatever milk you have in your house is fine. I just add them in slowly and whisk so that it gets completely incorporated. You can grab a bag of frozen peas. You don't even have to thaw it, honestly. And then I opened up my 4 cans of tuna here. As you can see, they opened just like magic. And I'm going to add the rest of the ingredients to my creamy sauce that I have going on the stove over here. So I just threw in that whole bag of peas, all of my mushrooms. I'm adding in my tuna, as well as like a big handful of cheese. Again, cheese you don't have to measure, just measure it with your heart. I ran out of room in my skillet, so I'm just going to mix this all up in a big bowl because by now my pasta is all done cooking. You definitely want to make sure your pasta is al dente because it's going to cook a little bit more in the oven and you do not want it to get mushy. So I'm just dividing it between my 2 casserole pans. I buy these aluminum ones in bulk on Amazon because they can get kind of pricey if you buy them individually, and they work great for freezer meals. So if you're going to be cooking it right away, just sprinkle a little Parmesan cheese on top, and I also added some gluten-free panko breadcrumbs just to give it a little crispy, crunchy topping. But if you're going to be freezing it, then I would wait and add that when you're going to be cooking it instead of putting it in the freezer that way. But this just bakes at 375 for 25 minutes, and it is so creamy and delicious. Definitely a lightened up version of the classic recipe from years ago. And here's a close-up of it after, or right before we are about to devour.
All right, so that is going to be it for this video. I really hope that you enjoyed it, that you found it useful. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. Leave me a comment with what your favorite recipe is, and if you have any freezer-friendly recipe ideas, please make sure to leave those in the comments as well so that I can give them a try. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.